Brahmana ahatushta aradito Bhagavan Vasudevaha
Bhagavan Vasudeva
ite shriti te nripaveda gite tvaya biprishte cha sanatane cha ye vai pura brahmana ahatushta aradito Bhagavan Vasudevaha
Ete shti te nepadeda gite
ite shriti te nripaveda gite
Tvaya viprishte cha sanatane cha
tvaya biprishte cha sanatane cha
Evai pura brahmana ahatushta
ye vai pura brahmana ahatushta
Aradito Bhagavan Vasudeva
aradito Bhagavan Vasudevaha
Ite sutite nripa veda gite Vaya viprishte cha sanatane cha
Vishte
nature
Ye vai pura brahmana hatushta
brahmana
Aradito bhagavan vasudevaha
to Bhagavan Vasudevaha ite shrutite nripa veda gite ite shrutite nripa veda gite tvaya biprishte cha sanatane cha tvaya biprishte cha sanatane cha ye vai pura brahmana ahatushta pura brahmana ahatushta aradito Bhagavan Vasudevaha aradito Bhagavan Vasudevaha
Ite shrutite nipaveda gite
te shrutite nripaveda gite
Vaya viprishte cha sanatane cha
tvaya biprishte cha sanatane cha
Ye vai pura brahmana ahatushta
ye vai pura brahmana ahatushta
Aradhito Bhagavan Vasudeva
aradito Bhagavan Vasudevaha
Ete stritite nirpaveda gite
yate shrutite nripaveda gite
Tvaya viprishte cha sanatane cha
tvaya biprishte cha sanatane cha
Ye vai pura brahmana ahatushta
vai pura brahmana ahatushta
Aradhito Bhagavan Vasudeva
aradito Bhagavan Vasudevaha
Ete shutite nirpaveda gite
nripaveda gite
Tvaya viprishte cha sanatane cha
tvaya biprishte cha sanatane cha
Ye vai pura brahmana ahatushta
pura brahmana ahatushta
Aradhito Bhagavana Vasudeva
aradito Bhagavan Vasudevaha
Ite shrutite nripaveda gite
gite
Tvaya viprishte cha sanatane cha
tvaya biprishte cha sanatane cha
Ye vai pura brahmana ahatushta
vai pura brahmana ahatushta
Aradhito Bhagavan Vasudevaha
aradito Bhagavan Vasudevaha
Ete shritinte pavedikite
Te Shrutite Nirpaveda Gite
Tvaya Vipriste Chasanatane Cha
Tvaya Biprishte Cha Sanatane Cha
Yevai Pura Brahmana Ahatushta
Yevai Pura Brahmana Hatushta
Aradito Bhagavan Vasudeva
Aradito Bhagavan Vasudeva
Ete Shriti Te Napat Vedagite
Te Shrutite Nirpaveda Gite
Trivai Pipishte Chananat Sananat Tanesha
Tvaya Biprishte Cha Sanatane Cha
Devai Pura Brahmanana Hatusta
Evai Pura Brahmana Hatushta
Aradito Bhagavan Vasudevaha
Aradito Bhagavan Vasudeva
Ete Shrutite Nipaveda Gite
Ete Shrutite Nirpaveda Gite
Tvaya Viprishte Cha Sanatane Cha
Tvaya Viprishte Cha Sanatane Cha
Evai Pura Brahmana Ahatushta
Yevai Pura Brahmana Ahatushta
Aradito Bhagavan Vasudeva
Adito Bhagavan Vasudeva Ete, all that is described, Shruti, way, te, unto you, Nripa, O Maharaj Parikshit, Veda Gite, according to the version of the Vedas, Tvaya, by your majesty, Abhiprishte, being properly inquired, Cha, also, Sanatane, in the matter of eternal truth, Cha, verily, yea, which, by, certainly, Pura, before, Brahmane, unto Lord Brahma, Aha, said, Tushtaha, being satisfied, Araditaha, being worshipped, Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead, Vasudevaha, Lord Krishna. Your Majesty, Maharaj Parikshit, know that all I have described in reply to your proper inquiry is just according to the version of the Vedas. It is eternal truth. This was described personally by Lord Krishna unto Brahma, with whom the Lord was satisfied upon being properly worshipped. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Jai. The two different paths of reaching the spiritual sky and thereby getting emancipation from all material bondage, namely either the direct process of reaching the kingdom of God or the gradual process through the other higher planets of the universe, are set forth exactly according to the version of the Vedas. The Vedic versions in this connection are Yada Sarve Pramanchute or Pramuchante Kama Ye Sya Hridi Shritaha Ata Martyo Mrito Bhagavat Yatra Brahma Samashnute. Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad 447 and Terchir Abhisambhavanti. Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad 2:6-15. Those who are free from all material desires, which are diseases of the heart, are able to conquer death and enter the kingdom of God through the Archie planets. These Vedic versions corroborate the version of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and the latter is further confirmed by Shukadev Goswami, who affirms that the truth was disclosed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, Vasudev, to Brahma, the first authority on the Vedas. The disciplic succession holds that the Vedas were uttered by Lord Krishna to Brahma, by Brahma to Narada, and by Narada to Vyasadeva, and then by Vyasadeva to Shukadev Goswami, and so on. So there is no difference between the versions of all the authorities. The truth is eternal, and as such, there cannot be any new opinion about the truth. That is the way of knowing the knowledge contained in the Vedas. It is not a thing to be understood by one's erudite scholarship or by the fashionable interpretations of mundane scholars. There is nothing to be added and nothing to be subtracted, because the truth is the truth. One has to accept, after all, some authority. The modern scientists are also authorities for the common man for some scientific truths. The common man follows the version of the scientist. This means that the common man follows the authority. The Vedic knowledge is also received in that way. The common man cannot argue what is beyond the sky or beyond the universe. He must accept the versions of the Vedas as they are understood by the authorized disciplic succession. In the Bhagavad Gita, also, the same process of understanding the Gita is stated in the 4th chapter. If one does not follow the authoritative version of the acharyas, he will vainly search after the truth mentioned in the Vedas. Om Agyana Tamarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Shtapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Purjana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Raganatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Purjana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
It's important that the knowledge be passed down directly, without any break. Because if there's a break, then the problem will be that the opportunity for speculation comes in. Whereas if the teacher teaches directly to his student, it's his duty to make sure the student understands. He, just like when one goes to university in some particular field of study, he doesn't get the higher degrees unless he works under a person. For example, they give that he has to have at least one mentor or 3 mentors or something, have to agree that he has learned properly, directly. Then he can be awarded the highest. Otherwise, there's every chance that things will be lost. It's like they have the game, telephone, children play that. They pass around a message, and even the message is given from person to person. By the time it gets around the room, it's changed. It's lost. That's ordinarily. So ordinarily, the transmission is not between common men. Common persons can't pass on this knowledge. They can't even understand it. So how can a common man pass on knowledge he doesn't understand? It becomes ludicrous. Now we have the broken chains in almost all spiritual lines at present. Even Krishna noted there was a broken line when he was present. And he wanted to, at least among the Kshatriyas, Evam parampara praptam imam raja shayo vidu sakale nehimahata yoganashta parantapa. This yoga science, the chain of disciplic succession has been broken. Therefore, I'm reestablishing with you, Arjuna. Arjuna was selected to be a qualified recipient of this transcendental knowledge so that he would be able to understand it. And the key thing is that all the followers after that, they have to understand as Arjuna is understood. And how is he understood? That's stated, Param Brahma, Param Dhamma, Pavitram, Paramam, Bhavam, Purusham, Shashvatam, Divyam, Adi Devam, Majam Vibhum. You are the supreme Brahman, the absolute truth, divine person. Everything has come from you. That's how he has understood Bhagavad Gita. And his conclusion at the end is, when Krishna asks him, have you heard these teachings? Have you understand them? What is your conclusion now? Nashtamoha smatir labdha. And he says, I've heard what you said very nicely. And I've come to the conclusion, Parishe vachanam tava. I will carry out your order. This is the correct conclusion of Bhagavad Gita. And similarly, the Vedas. Bhagavad Gita is a summary of the Vedas. Considered Gita Upanishad. And Srimad Bhagavatam is the ripened fruit, the tree of ripened fruit of all the Vedas. So among all the Vedas, the Srimad Bhagavatam is held in the highest esteem. And Bhagavad Gita is spoken by Krishna. These are both Krishna Katha. But we have to hear from the spiritual master directly. Because if it's not directly, then we have a situation where someone he wants to try to teach others what he's learned, but he's not clear on certain things, so then he speculates. It's like they take the word of a philosopher. Some philosopher says animals have no soul. There's no such thing as reincarnation. You live one time. Eternality begins when you're born this time and then forever, you live forever. Who made these things up? Where are they coming from? They're not coming from the parampara. They're not coming from the proper source. If you ask, where'd you hear this? And you find out that it's a shambles. There's a story Prabhupada tells about Sargal Singh. I'll try to relate it quickly. A man, he had shaved his head and was undergoing great lamentation for the loss of Sargal Singh. So someone saw him and he told them Sargal Singh was such a great Mahatma, great personality. That's why I've shaved my head. So the other said, oh, I'll shave my head too. He shaved his head. He was lamenting. Someone saw him. Why are you in lamentation? Sargal Singh has passed away. Sargal Singh, who's great soul? So then he shaved his head. So pretty soon everyone shaved their head. They were all lamenting Sargal Singh. And somebody said, "Who is this Sargal Singh?" And he said, "Well, actually, I don't know. I never met. So I don't know." So they traced it back to the one man who had started the thing. They said, "Who is Sargal Singh?" He said, my donkey. So they were all lamenting because the donkey had passed away. They thought it was a great soul. So this is what can happen when one doesn't receive knowledge properly and understand it. Who are we talking about? Who is Krishna? Is Krishna just an ordinary person? Is he made with blood and bones like everyone else? If so, how can he become God? Those are good questions. If those questions are presented to the proper source or to the proper learned person, he'll be able to dispel them quite easily and explain who Krishna is. Krishna is not an ordinary person. He has no birth. He has no mother. He has no father. He's the original source. He's the source of Brahma. He's the source of Vishnu. And on. He can go on explaining, like Prabhupada has explained. Everything by referring to the Vedas. No imaginative opinions. If anyone imagines anything or presents anything that's not from the Vedas, it has to be rejected. Cannot be rejected, cannot be accepted.
Thank you, Maharaj. So we have to have the right source for any knowledge that we get in the world. And as we heard, everyone has to accept some authority, even just to learn any simple task in school. We go and we get a teacher and learn from them. So for understanding things that are beyond our senses and what we just see on a day-to-day basis, we'll have to accept some sort of higher authority, like it was explained in the purport, to know what's going on beyond the sky and even beyond the universe. Someone would have to accept a higher authority. That's not something we can see on our own. Even with a high-powered telescope or something, we can't understand what's going on throughout the whole universe or other universes. So the common man would usually just accept whoever is presented as the top scientist, and they'll be the authority because maybe they're distinguished or have some awards or the textbook accepts them. So then whatever they say about beyond what we can perceive with our senses, then okay, that must be the truth. But we can see here in all of the Vedic literature, and in the whole Krishna consciousness movement, there's great learned persons and saintly devotees who are presenting the truths of life and what's going on in this universe and beyond this universe. And so if there's two different opinions, if a scientist is saying one thing or any other material authority, and then these personalities presented in the Vedas are saying something different, then one would have to decide, okay, which truth or which teacher am I going to actually go with or follow? So as we heard, this whole science of Vedic knowledge and Krishna consciousness was first presented to Brahma. And Brahma is qualified as the person who creates everything in the universe. He constructs the whole thing. He's the first living creature in the universe. So if one could say, okay, I want to accept what the guy at NASA says is going on this planet over there in the universe. But if Brahma, the person who made the entire universe, not just one solar system or one planet, but the whole universe, if he has something to say about it, then it would just be natural to accept his authority or his version over someone else's. And then also we can see what makes somebody qualified to be a learned person or a teacher. Somebody might want to accept any sort of authority or teacher, but what qualifications do they have? Even just mundane material qualifications, Chanakya Pandit explains that a learned person can be characterized by a couple things. And one of them is that they see others' belongings as like refuse or garbage in the street. They don't want to, they say, okay, that's someone else's, I won't even mess with it. And they leave it. And there's a couple others. And then one of them is that they see every woman as mother. Anyone who's not their wife, they see as a mother. So we can see these are just very basic material qualifications for a learned person. So we might want to say, okay, I want to accept this great big scientist because he made this rocket ship and he's got this big car company and all sorts of cool gadgets. So I want to accept whatever he says as the truth. But then we can see, does he even have these most basic qualifications for a learned person? Is he accepting every woman that is not his wife as his mother and respecting them in that way? Or is he lusting after everything that he sees and running after them like a dog? If that's his characteristics, then we can see, okay, this person isn't actually learned, so why should I accept their version of what's going on in the universe and the purpose of life? And we can see the person who's speaking the Srimad Bhagavatam, he is so qualified. Shukadeva Goswami, or the person who's speaking to Maharaj Parikshit within the Srimad Bhagavatam, speaking the Srimad Bhagavatam to Maharaj Parikshit, he is so much qualified that even when he arrives at this assembly of all these great sages, all the most learned persons in the entire universe who have all sorts of knowledge of who is God, who is the soul, what is going on in the world. They do great austerities. They're truthful, honest, compassionate, all these things. They have so many wonderful characteristics. And they've been living for many, many, many years. But Shukadeva Goswami arrives and he's just a teenager. And they all say, this is the person that we will have speak the Bhagavatam. So all these great authorities like Narada Muni is mentioned here. He's the second person to receive this knowledge of Krishna consciousness. So first Krishna speaks it, and we can see on the wall here the disciplic succession to Brahma, and Brahma then teaches it to Narada Muni. And Narada Muni, he can travel wherever he wants because he's so qualified. Just like if we do some sort of criminal activities, we become less qualified to move around freely. You might not be allowed in a certain city or allowed to drive at a certain place, or you do more criminal activities and you're locked in just a cell in a building somewhere. But we can see Narada Muni, he's so qualified and he has so much trust and he's such a reputable authority that he's allowed to go wherever he wants, anywhere in the material universes, anywhere in the spiritual universes. He's that much trusted by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, that he can go anywhere. So this great authority, Narada Muni, he was one of the people here in Naimisharanya when Shukadeva Goswami arrived. And even he and all the other sages are saying, yes, Shukadeva Goswami should be accepted as a great teacher. So if he's accepting what Shukadeva Goswami says, then how are we to think, okay, I'm better than Narada Muni. I'll surpass what Shukadeva Goswami has to say. I'll accept some other version of reality. So if we want to get real knowledge of the world, of ourselves, and of God, the best place to look would be the Vedas, because first of all, they're spoken by God himself. And then the people who are transmitting that knowledge after the Supreme Personality of Godhead are extremely qualified. And in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains what are the symptoms of somebody who's in this transcendental consciousness. What are the qualifications of somebody who's rightly situated? So we can see it's not just, okay, they look spiritual or they have a long beard or cool robes, but it's an actual science. So Krishna explains, here's the general symptoms of somebody situated in transcendental consciousness. Here's the specific symptoms How do they sit? How do they walk? How do they act in the world? And like this, it can be checked. It's not just something vague. So Srila Prabhupada explains that to understand, this analogy is given that even just to see ourselves, first of all, the sun needs to be out. Because if it's pitch black, we can't even know who we are. We can't even see our own hand a few feet in front of us. But as soon as there's a light or the sun, then we can also see ourselves. So to understand ourselves in the world properly, if the light of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, if we see him, then we can see ourselves and everything else properly. So in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is explaining himself and how to understand him and how he is seeing the world. He's explaining everything, his thinking and his understanding. And so if we can read the Bhagavad Gita and understand it in association of devotees, then we can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead and accept his version of reality. And why would we want to accept any other version of reality? He's the person who is the source of everything real. Everything in the world is coming from him. So we can understand him and his point of view in the Bhagavad Gita. And then we have the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is just giving the essence of all of the Vedas, which is love of Godhead, explaining how we can develop our love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead and showing very vivid examples of that throughout all of history. So these two texts are extremely powerful because they give us all of the knowledge that we need to know. If one knows Krishna, they know everything. So with the Bhagavad Gita and the Bhagavatam, we can know who we are, who is God, what is my eternal relationship with God, how I can serve him, and how I can get out of this material entanglement and back to the spiritual world. Are there any questions or comments? Yes, Krishna and Prabhu. Mm-hmm.
You were mentioning how people respect these scientists and personalities who, can't even control their senses, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So then I was thinking how, people worship these celebrities and different people. And, what came to my mind was like Elvis Presley. He was like one of the greatest personalities at his time. Everybody like worshipped him and praised him, and people went crazy to see him. And then the way he left his body was, on a toilet in the bathroom, like intoxicated. So, this is what it's like. But Krishna, he drives in the importance of one's consciousness, especially at the time of death. So you could see that, these people are completely lost and they're leading people astray also. Just kind of touching on Maharaj's point of why we need the Vedic version.
That makes me think of another important point in accepting a teacher is that someone's character should be pure if they're going to teach others, because even if they're not directly, like you gave this example of Elvis, even if he's not directly doing this intoxication and whatnot in front of his followers, if this is his character and what's going on in his life, then even if he's not doing it right in front of them, that's still being imparted to them, because whatever we associate with, we take on those qualities. So if we're associating with someone else's consciousness through their words or their teachings or their music or their writing, we're associating with that person. So we're taking on their qualities. So this is another good point about accepting if we want to accept a teacher, we should find someone who's pure in character. Otherwise, we're going to take on all those impure qualities. We might say, oh, this person's a great president, or like you said, this person's a great musician or star. So I'll just hear from them a little bit. I'll read their books and hear their music and this and that. But even if they have so-called nice music or so-called good political systems. Just hearing from them and associating with that consciousness, we're also going to take on those degraded habits that they have. Are there any other comments or questions? Anybody? Okay. Yeah.
Hare Krishna. I've been speaking with a lady who her partner is living in a temple, and she is at a point where she's so depressed and hopeless about life. She knows about Krishna, and especially from her partner, she hears often about this knowledge, and she can see, okay, this is something good. But she is having a hard time having faith. And so I was wondering if you could speak on some ways that, maybe I can offer, or maybe some ways I could offer for her to develop that faith. Because, hearing from her partner, it's hard for her to accept it because they're so close. I don't know if that makes sense, but can you speak on that a little bit?
Yeah, and when someone wants to come to devotional service, first they get some appreciation. So they see, okay, this is very nice, or my partner's habits have become better. This Krishna consciousness movement must have something to offer. And they get some interest like this. And then they begin hearing like she's doing. But then the next and really powerful thing is that they start associating with devotees. And then their faith really strengthens, because any doubts or questions they have, they can present them to the devotees. Those can be answered. And then with a clear mind, they can go ahead in devotional service and make rapid advancement. So it's very helpful to associate with devotees, because this way we can understand the points in scripture more and clear any doubts that we have about it out quickly. So that's the most important thing, associating with advanced devotees, especially with doing Krishna conscious activities, especially hearing and chanting. Thank you all. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.